Chanju Badu Dani Jazu Che Daki Chichin Jive Sun Drola Benji Sanje Druva Jo Sanje Cheda Zoje Chana Chanju Badu Dani Jazu Che Daki Chichin Jive Sun Drola Benji Sanje Druva Jo Sanje Cheda Ani Jazu Che Daki Chichin Jive Sun Allah Benji Sanje Juba Sho La Dang La Medam Yang Hong Bada Chen La Cho La Chava Chava Sanje Sumbara Do Shin Tue Jura Chava Chada Chi Teme Chin Tin De Chi Chiri Tue Chin De Ji Sa Ve Ti Ju Ten Chin Cheba Te La Churu Te Ju Kuwa Yin De La Benye Je Je Sun Che Yin Ambi Dani Le Wa Da La Tue Sun Yin Yin Wa La Ye Kwe Lam Dani Chen Kwe Chupu De Tam Yi Tera Draw Queen Jie Zhan Ma Che Zaba Tam Je Kai Du Ta Ki Che Den Do Kang Ki Yang Wo Den Jun Yang Wo Me Ba Ni Tu Song Yi Xi Ni Me San Me Jia Be Me Te La Cha Cha Lo No Ya Ta Ka Su Le No Ya Ka Se Le 我们今个告诉是吧？顺逆心的现在心是必须要纠结吧？这几次在大起心的，就把钱包把你掏，这过对，这些你不能了。然后，我呀，顺逆心的现在属谁干了？新的现在属谁了？但哦，都有光把这做的了，是吧？俺这身上我出的些这做的。 我没出的这种，别人多的光着大夫，是吧？我多的光着大夫了，俺那光把这种得了，俺那是我没有是这种当三张结束你月娃延长，出你新的学呢是吧？出你去，俺那新的来学呢，日本三角978，日本给俺那三。 riba ge sabjo sab ki ani wakasa le ani shungu tian dan la ba da ju sa dan be da la ruan na xie xie ribi sabjo 978所以现在现在说是必须要就去吧，特级特大起薪的，特级特大起薪的，提把钱不把你多。 现在所以看了，天这月安尼，我看是初一的，安尼长话的那位天点了泡泡给，安尼天呢，安尼他妈天上天个点了泡，安尼300公，哦，安尼公三种写了，天那公中点完了点呢，杨树两把了点呢，安尼哦。 我提把去为咱们人民对，俺那三节就恐怕讨厌的，但这送就多少钱了，是吧？
So now then, as it says in the Madhyama Kalamkara, the ornament for the middle way, which is cited in the Essence of Good Explanations, by mounting on the chariot of the two vehicles and employing the reins which guide one, reins of reasoning which guide one through the two styles or two modes of interpreting the scriptures. One can arrive at the state of omniscience by means of the great vehicle. So what this verse is saying, in essence, is the basic meaning of it is that the great vehicle here is analogous to the chariot itself, and then upon that chariot, one is mounted and utilizes the reins of reasoning, and there are two of them, and this is referring, for example, to the way in which the Sandhi Nirmochana Sutra, the explication of the thought of the Buddha, that sutra, it teaches the nature of things and it's suitable to be interpreted in multiple ways within the Yogacara or mind-only school, it's interpreted in one way, and then in the Madhyamika school, it's interpreted in another way. So both of these two great schools of exegesis and interpretation of the Mahayana scriptures have their own ways of understanding the nature of reality as it's expressed in the Sandhi-Nirmochana Sutra, etc. However, and each of them has a way of interpreting these scriptures such that some are taken to be of provisional intention or provisional meaning, and then others are taken of definitive meaning, and they differ on that. But when employing the reasoning which is found within these two great schools, the mind-only and the Madhyamika school, then one can gain and using them sequentially too, by understanding the Yogacara or mind-only school, that serves as a basis for understanding the Madhyamika interpretation as well. So by employing those two, one can, through reasoning, arrive at the destination of omniscience.
Oh yeah, that end of any castle do you go back there? Bena, I can do some condetella, and the daughter condetta will can do some combat there. And the daughter condetta combat there, tell a young combat there to tell her, then it are carrier, Sena, or Naju Jabagis, Naju Jabawa, sometimes Batang, sometimes better to Chitang. I know Uma will take to chicken in Tanda T-shirt. What the images with the Nita country Sana Casore. Ni Santa to do Della. Ani Sunanam Jingabaji Che Tamja, Colotam Pabicado Sunanam Jingabaji Che Tamja, Demba Meba Sumi to take Demba Meba Subi, Consi Della. Anita Casa. 我你那时候讲，我们那时候啦，我呢全拿同学呢，我你们电话人真的，你真的看说的哩，甚至干了说吧，那些钱呢，钱你我你们不他，就往我你们不他，哦，你看说的全都往我你们把他过呢，他看见钱你什么了，你电话人没给吃不啥我钱呢，电没过呢，你我光把的都是这个的。
Now, then within those two schools, the first one is called Yogacara, or often it's referred to as the mind-only or mere mind school, the school that posits things being merely mental in nature. Within that, they have their way of interpreting the scriptures. So they would take, for example, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which we find the different versions of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, the abbreviated, the intermediate, and the extensive, the more extensive version of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, and which are found within the middle turning of the wheel of Dharma, when Lord Buddha taught the Dharma in 3 turnings of the wheel. Then within that, they interpret the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras in line with their understanding of the way reality exists, and they do that by means of what are called the 3 natures and the 3 non-natures, or essencelessness, the 3 forms of essencelessness. So there's the nature of things which is identityless, and then there's the nature of things which is unarisen, and then there's the nature of things which is perfect. And so those 3 natures are used to explain how some things exist by means of their own intrinsic identity, whereas other things do not exist by means of their own intrinsic identity. And they do that by saying, and positively, there's sort of 3 natures of things, and then those 3 natures are equally qualified by an absence of essence in a certain sense, to some degree, and a negation of a form of essence within these things, as far as being established by means of their own intrinsic identity or not.
Oh yeah, and they tend to be telling you what I am. And the Kazakh Dame on the chair, tell you some Georgia Chidam. She Dame on the chair, tell you some Chidam, but Georgia Cheki, send them to Stegi or Yenzang. That or Lenden Jetawoki, and Kadisungore, Sana, and it are some Zambagi, Jesu Day, and do you turn damn member. So, and you omit to Jade, and it are Sungore. Gondela Chinese soon be turn. Najo Jabawataki, Chita Tawadi, do you turn members? Najo Jabawaki, and it's Sunami Baji Shetamje, Dembame Basun, what the Chinese Sumla Guanem, and a Shezude. 小王的用这电报出发的，滚到去了，对外没把它关了，先做送把的。我打第一个我那个说，俺那去他们去的，嘎巴个送进移动了，加国外印章。我光这了，曾经送兵，那就叫把我他个其他找我的多一天明白了。我每天都这位，那么说的呢，连天去吃我修的呢，我们那完了写多次，他告诉的，我每天都这话是一个了，俺呢天的把没吧。小王子曾经送个，俺那天他把没把了，真的，俺那写作的，俺那他这告诉的连天去给是这样。
So now then, now Master Bhaviveka, his name is sometimes given as Bhavya or sometimes Bhavaviveka, but nowadays people are calling him Bhaviveka, so we'll use that. And so this Master Bhaviveka, he criticizes the Yogacara way of interpreting the intent of the Sandhi-Nirmochana Sutra, the sutra which explicates the intention of Lord Buddha in the final turning of the wheel of Dharma. And in that he says that when the Yogacharas make this distinction, they say that dependent phenomena are real in one extent. They're established ultimately, and whereas the imaginary phenomena are not real and not established by means of their own intrinsic identity. So they make that kind of distinction, and they say when one's interpreting the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, one necessarily has to make that kind of differentiation in terms of what Lord Buddha is saying is established by means of its own intrinsic identity and what is not established by means of its own intrinsic identity. So that differentiation of things into these three categories of the three natures, and then the absence of nature, which is the negation of the existence of intrinsic identity with respect to imaginary things and dependent things, with respect to imaginary things, that sort of differentiation is erroneous according to Master Bhaviveka. He would say that their way of interpreting the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras is not at all the intention of the sutra, and in fact their interpretation of the Sandhi-Nirmochana Sutra, the explication of the Buddha's Thought Sutra, is also erroneous, that is not actually the intention, what the Buddha had in mind when he taught that sutra.
Oh yeah, Anita Castle, Chidi Shabaki, Anita Dodichi, Lenden Jedatan. Chidi Shaji Meshabalayang, and the Shito Yapsadan, and the passing Yapse. Diginaneda, Tanda di Jubo Castle, Lendeji Yapse, Jenden Jigi, Anita Castle, Dodi Gondel Castle. 甚至被写对的多一天店面吧，他的喜欢那些多一天店面吧写吧。习作也是给俺那卡做的是呢，多一天演讲，俺那点击做我马英吧。三张不逻辑，陈毅书记拿下的，俺那多的光这个，这是个团咱们去演讲，俺那点个做我马英吧。 是吧？那第二天这了，他是要是一爬车的当，升个三百给，俺你听着我的得多一点击做我先呢。现在我们陈毅书记拿下的点击做我前呢，先呢，俺你多的光的，现在通过马一百嘎。 多这东光这个气度些都加了300万元都买吧，现在通马一百嘎，怕谁先小钱。 那第一节啦，新作业是给俺那电视个团马英把蛮多，点击做的，点个做我的，俺那看着也是我们我们去看，俺那陈毅书记拿下，连天节先把拿些钱呢，俺那7点新闻先把有了嘛的，连天的先把拿些，俺那点击做，我们跟把人长，我人长，俺那多的光着我们干些哇。 现在个他们忙也不干没啥，院长 대지 자신이 배텐도 전반에 염지도 강거체도 숨비 도자 미대배 대체도 체유 도자네 도지의 광대지 자와시도 도발라 셰배 콜로 치마냐 광바 즉빙 전에다 시족이 디르성화래 저와 콜로 자신이 배텐도 전간데 콜로 타면 때만나지 자신이 배텐도 전바데 아니 콜로 바바 손주 콜로 타마 손주 도자 말이 저와 인자한다 천이삼점을 천이숨 지내가 돼 대생기 퇴이 이제 땡지 조금 많이 봐 또야 간주 엄마에 가인 봐 나도 렌데 대단 지봐 다 대생기 퇴 많이 봐마도 대생점에 퇴 많이 봐마도 셰지 봐 다도시 아니베 레베스 모델에 주주면서 쓰면 해야 돼 그래서 그러면서
It's this. So now then, as far as the way the sutra is interpreted, as we said, Master Bhaviveka rejects the Yogacara interpretation of this and says that that's not correct, that in fact, that's not the explicit teaching of or that the Sandhina Mochana Sutra, the way that the Yogacara interprets it is incorrect. Now, after Master Bhaviveka appeared and explained the Sandhina Mochana in accordance with the Madhyamika kind of interpretation, then other masters appeared as well within the Swatantrika Madhyamika, general Swatantrika Madhyamika tradition, so that, for example, you have Arya Vimuktasena and as well as Haribhadra, and they interpret the Sandhina Mochana Sutra in such a way as to agree in general with Master Bhaviveka. They would say that I'm sorry again.
난주 제법을 대비 천이 숨지 나자지 도대 공적 그 된다는 거 봐셔와래 좋아 참 많이 봐
그래 이티 뭐네 나
도대 공적 그 진짜 많이 봐 선자물로지 천이 숨지 남샤데 도대 공적 그 많이 봐
그래
엄마물로지 천이 숨지 나샤데 마마도 색깔을 가보면 돼야 되나? 같이 해서.
가사네. 나 산우 메페 모타 더브레 드링. 나 산우 메페 모타 더브레 나.
그래. 오늘 유쇼야. 야. 다음은 대유쇼야. 다음은 더 좋은 지체도 마셔고 사셔. 다 되는 인자. 나 되니 다 가서래. 운전 천전물 루지 가서 렌렌 제기 안에 다 가르래서나 도저 관계기 된 의미제도 제기에 돼. 단다 지수 말해서 의미 관계라 천이 숨숨 된 의미 텐도 제외 남소대 렌렌 지지 쳐와修되니 우만나와라 샤도 세가라 나 도저 관계기 된 의미 라시 천이 숨게 나샤대 샤완 된다 마음에 받아 군다 된다 마음에 받아 온도 된다 마음에 받아 전에 안에 도저 관계기 된 셰그와 인상 자, 인상 다 되는 텐자위 안에 도저 관계 그 텐시 아니 란지비 아니 다 가서래 주다 때나 봐야 되라 다 오만 님보 다 오만 님보 그게 대화되라 안에 대화 또게 봐와是吧 다 대화 또게 봐 당연 오늘 맞으면去了마시샤고是吧 대화 또게 봐와 다 대화 또게 봐와 되라 안에 다 루 담보 되라 루 가서래 주시 같이 누가 주시네 주니 누가 어디 있나네 다 류 담보 되라 어머님 비트와 또게 봐와라 자주 세매동 류 담보是吧 다 대가가도 마지막아 치다야 아니 가서 뜻에 따라 간자라 벽가도 어머님이 저와 또게 봐와是吧 다 뒤에 반복 담보 탄제 참발라 차차로 다디 저와 류 담보의 인지 작가를 주요할 수도 와是吧 니나 랑게 다 반보 탐보 는 쳐봐지 내리 규자지 다 쳐봐라 내가 랑게 이도 와라 탐보 차자와 녀를 댐비 아니 댄주 당니 아니 주 바위见当 파제 매바당 려우단 담바 줄외 아니 见当 但是怎么了？爬进没把汤，但是准备简单，但是怎么了？俺那州，我看说的州没把民主啊，州的那把区外，俺那汤嘛，俺那但是准备汤嘛，俺那吃吧的，这些但是吃呗，但是去汤不吃吧的了，看给天你让他们，那些前面西马人，前面他们人家们这些没进대화堂。 남다 많이 나와매 참아 매신 사제매 이미 많이당 시당 로주 방와당 이게 매봐 이게 투진이지 댄자봐 아니 땜바 많이 되니 송 세우달라다 쳐봐달라 아니 대송 거죠 와 지제달라 다디 지제도 되는 망아마 디나 코란 저와 이다 디마마 좋고 야 시했던 말라 다 되니 기계 제발 투모 모임 바타기 아니 좀 된다라 아니 제발 아니 투모 모임 바타기 제발 제발 타기 담바 제베 저 담바 제베 오야 다 되니 막 야 되니 최저체다 뒤마 저기 잖아 담바 제베 아니 담바 제발 좀 봐, 제발 니기 아니 좀 된다라 쳐봐요 그래, 좋아. 야, 나 되니 마 양안에 뒤치도게 오나, 말려가 야.
So now then, this text we're reading today, it's called the Blaze of Reasoning or Flame of Reasoning, which is a commentary on the Madhyamaka Hridaya, which Madhyamaka Hridaya means like the heart or essence of the middle way, and so it's a commentary which explains that. And here, this is Master Bhaviveka's way of explaining Madhyamika in a way in accordance with the school, a line of interpretation that he established, the Swatantrika Madhyamika lineage, and he's the one who, in a sense, opened the way for that line of interpretation within the Madhyamika tradition. And then there were other great followers that Rinpoche just mentioned, the followers such as the Arya Vimuktasena and Haribhadra, and then later Shantarakshita and Kamalashila. They interpret Madhyamika, the Madhyamika in slightly different ways because, for example, Master Shantarakshita and Kamalashila agree with the Yogacara school in rejecting the existence of external objects conventionally, although they would say that on the ultimate level one can't establish that in exactly the same way the Yogacara does. But, and then, so in general though, Master Bhaviveka criticized the Yogacara interpretation which posits that dependent phenomena and the perfect nature of things are real or established by means of their own intrinsic identity and thus are ultimately existent on some level. So this text is presenting that and a number of other different things, which is in line with Master Bhaviveka's interpretation of Madhyamika, which is again falling under the Swatantrika Madhyamika line of exegesis. So this text, at the very beginning of it, the title is given, and it says in the first chapter here is the chapter which is the explanation of how not to give up bodhicitta, and that's coming out of this commentary called the Blaze of Reasoning or Dialectics. You could say Doke Tarka is like dialectics, the process of reasoned investigation of things, and it's the commentary on the essence of the middle way. So the text begins by giving the title in Sanskrit, Madhyamaka Hridaya Vritti Tarkajvala, is the transliteration of the Sanskrit title of the commentary, and the root text again is Madhyamaka Hridaya, and Then in Tibetan, it's Uminingpo Dralba Toke Barwa, just to give the Tibetan translation of that. And then here it is broken up into bampos, which are like text sections. In the old translations, they did it that way. And so here, it begins with an homage to the Omniscient One. That is, I think, the translator's homage there, showing that this as a form of auspicious to complete the translation. And then here it says in the commentary, it begins by saying, within this, at the beginning, one pays homage at the very outset to one's own deity, and in an attractive fashion, showing the attractive nature of one's own deity, and that is given at the outset of the exposition in the treatise here. The reason for doing that is so that one will be able to complete the process of composition. The process of composition won't be interrupted, and here it's showing that it serves as a function to encourage the person who's composing the text to have the sort of heroism to be able to undergo the process of composition, to do that so that it won't be interrupted, and so that it also will be fruitful, meaning the result of engaging in the composition will be produce some positive results. And then so Master Bhavaveka says, therefore, in order to complete write the treatise, at the very outset of the treatise, and then he gives the initial verses of homage. And the homage here is saying, I pay homage, it comes at the very end, respectfully, to that one, and then there's a whole string of epithets of Lord Buddha here, and that which is being paid homage to. And here it's described as the reality which it cannot be examined. One cannot examine it. It's not an object of consciousness. It's without a foundation. It's without definition. It's unthinkable. It's not something which is knowable. It's devoid of rising and disintegration. It's bliss. It's again, it says here, not something which is one can investigate or critically analyze. It doesn't appear. It's devoid of any sign. It's without any manifestation. It's non-dual and without duality. It's non-dual and not non-dual as well. It's peaceful and it's devoid of the activities of intellect. It's this last thing says here, it's the imperishable letter, or literally it says a letter which is devoid of letters, but the word letter here is akshara. An akshara can also be translated as imperishable, and it's that which has been taught taught properly out of great compassion, and so the teacher is the person being praised here, the teacher who teaches that without any kind of error. I pay homage to that teacher.
Oh yeah, that is so no. Chaba tamba zaba meni shechaba tene kasa that.
Again, that's going on. And so I pay, and so it says here at the very beginning, there's a praise praise of this teacher, showing that teacher, referring to the Buddha here, the special teacher who teaches this unique exposition of reality.
Oh yeah. Then you tambo seta. 가서 대랑 Dini Kasore, Kangi Tini Ratame, Namshe Chami Shimain, Sedela, Kangi Sheva, Kang Sheva, Chita Yinjang, Ani Chita Yang, Ani Tichi Maloba Tamba Zabasana, Tekwana Chi Maloba Tamba Zabani, Tiktan, Dreve, Ani Toba Jamden, the Kwana Koko Grace, Chi Maloba Tamba Zabani, Dini Jamden Kwana, Jamden the Kwana Jago Grace, Kang said, Kangi Tini. Tini Jevani, Chabata Tendu Sejang, and Chabachi Shimadana, and a Medoba in Zan, Tini City Tekwana, Tini Medi, and a Jidan Batan Jidan and Debbie, that Jidan and Debbie, over Tedaki, Tini days, that Dombani. Dombani, Tishini Dang, Shuji Yindang, Dombani Jeshawa Tadak, Namda So, Namda So, Digni. That means that Jeshawan Lodan Deva go to Tanawala, Jesu Bobby Sheve, and Tabachawa Maimbam, Ayana. Toda Jaba Tishimi, Sager, Tobatella, and I don't do the Tobatang, Ani or Totan Jaba Tishini, Shevicana, Yule Shibu Jobatan, Tiwinaba Joba, Jesu Juba Ruma, or Jesu Juba Rum, Tanju Juma Rui, and a Tekonani, the Tenda Toba, Chitawa Shinto, and a Juyu Maimba. Juyu Maimba is a Arada means.
So next, so the verse of homage there begins by who, the person referring back to, again to the Buddha who teaches all of this, and that word who in the instrumental case here is although it's a general word that applies in general to teachers in general, it's here in this particular context it's being applied strictly to the Bhagavan, Lord Buddha, who is the one who teaches reality without any kind of error, because he teaches reality without any kind of error, then this is being applied specifically to the Bhagavan. And then with respect to reality, the word reality, it's although that's been taught, specified already, here in order to demonstrate what is the basis for that specification, the word which is the basis for that specification, it's given various sorts of qualifications that are following the verse, and someone might not understand the specific qualifications of this term, and therefore Master Bhaviveka has said reality, has expressed that word reality, and reality here is the reality of both worldly and transcendental things, all internal, external, mundane and supramundane things. It's the reality of that. So the word there, reality, tattva, and tatata, thusness, sometimes is a translator, suchness, is another name for reality, and dharmadhatu, the sphere of phenomena, is another name for it, and shunyata, or emptiness, also are terms which are employed to designate this reality or tattva reality. And then it's not something that can be investigated. That word there, it means that because this is something that a inferential cognition for which things are appearing like slightly hidden things by means of a concept here, or a universal. It says literally thought operates through the medium of universals, and so it's not something which is something that can be investigated or understood understood through the medium of inference, which understands hidden things through the medium of universals. So one can read that in that way. Or one can say that it's something which thought and analysis, which are relatively coarse forms of mental activity, cannot engage with this by means of, in this most subtle sort of fashion, or are unable to do that. So this reality then is not a object which is suitable for thought or analysis to be able to understand it just as it is. And then its next epithet is that it's not something which is conceptually thinkable. It's not conceivable. And so it's not something that, it's not an object which is something that can be understood by means of consciousness, which engages by means of the five consciousness which engage in the five sorts of objects of knowledge. So this is probably in reference just to sense perception. It's not something that's perceivable through the senses. And then the last, or one could say it's not something that, alternatively, one could read that as five different kinds of consciousness, here referring to those of foolish, ordinary beings, tirtakas, or the beings that are on the path of training or are not training, which are either Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddhas. All of those are unable to understand this. That's that epithet. It's not an object of consciousness in that sense. And then saying it's without any foundation, it's not something that that exists as a foundation for all of the seeds which give rise to mental activity within the alaya vijnana, or basal consciousness, and so it doesn't have that kind of, and nevertheless it operates as a basis for sentient beings, for persons to be able to achieve their personal liberation, and so that. Again, the Hakumasum Kebula doctor and Namkishi tar Kebula doctor and Namkishi Ale Hakusun.
And I'm going to tip a lesson.
Just Lama Ale Konda Lama Namshi Chairman.
But
I'm sorry, I went ahead.
Shibi number two, but Toban Joba Tini is a Tobatang. Ani Joba Shibi number Jesu Juba, Hanju Rumaki, Tetaki, Doji Tetaki, Ani Juyu Mayimba. Tekonaniti. Nita Namshi Chami Shevani, Shejala Nabanga, Segaras, Ani Shejas Kasare, Suda Tiro, Rita, Malan Jubi, Nambasheva, Nambasheva Chava Mayimba, Mayimbi Shiram, Sikana, or the Kasare. Namshi Chamisi, Yana Soso Jodang, Mudi Badang, Mudi Chedang, Ani Loa Pabadang, Yaram Milovadang, Rasa Janam Jijang, Anichi, or Chidawachi Dongosu to Dom Miniba. Shima Yin Shechavani, Chitaris, she Gushi Nambasheva. There were some of a cushion number, cushion think a Pacha Sabala Dana, and you did all you and some of the Pacha Sabala Dana, you gented a you thought Shagua. In the cushion number, she was Toby Sabin, Tamjaji, she over town. And it Jula and Dartro. That's one of the she of us. Tachiro at the jockey. Dilla sit down, couldn't joy about my imbom. So you can't and did sit down, couldn't joy about my ino said. Anything she might said the chat. Chemi said, Tekonani de Randanji, Tenji Chambachawa, my imba. Ranji Tenji Tamji Chambachaba, my imbom. And dealing over Kayan, Kazen, dealing over Kayan Chambachawa, my imbo, Tekonani, over Kayan Chambachaba, my imbo. Yeah, that
So I had gone ahead there. So to go back, saying it's not something that's an object of consciousness. One can read that epithet referring to reality here as meaning that it's not something which can be known by. It's not something that's conceivable, or that's cognizable by the five sorts of consciousness which engage with the five types of objects of knowledge. Here, reference to sensory phenomena, and so it's not something that's sensible. It's something that can be perceived through the senses, and then, or one could read this epithet also as referring to it's not something that can be understood by these five types of persons: ordinary, foolish, or childish sentient beings, the Tirthakas, the Aryas who have achieved the path of seeing, or are those who have achieved who are on the path of training, or those who have achieved the paths of no more training. And then the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddhas, those also, none of them are fully able to understand this. That is, fully able to understand it exactly as it is, and so that's an explanation of that epithet. And then it's without basis or foundation. One can again read that in two ways. One can say this is it's not a basis for all of the, it doesn't exist as a basis for all of the seeds which give rise to mental activity. So mental activity entails both the arising of subjects, perceiving subjects and their objects within the Yogacara school, which posits no substantial duality of perceiving subject and perceptor or object of consciousness. And so that it doesn't exist as a basis like that within the Alaya Vijnana, which the basal consciousness, which is posited by the Yogacara school. So it doesn't exist in that way. And one can also say that it's not a basis for beings that imagine that a self is liberated. So this is probably reference to the Tirthakas who posit some kind of self of persons that is liberated. It's not that kind of foundation. And so one could read this since that is the case, that this is not something which is a foundation, which could be a basis, which could be construed in that way, in any way whatsoever. Or one could read it as saying that it's not something which functions as a basis for this world the world in any way whatsoever. It can't be construed as being a basis for that either. And then the next one is epithet is it's indefinable, one could say, or it cannot be characterized. And so this epithet means that this reality is not something which can be defined or illustrated by either specific or general characteristics. It's not something that can be established by that in that way. Or one can also read that as saying that this reality does not function to illustrate any kind of thing whatsoever.
Oh yeah, there's someone that 첨부 제가 많이 봐. 다음에 시험에 최담자란 거 용서 맞추기 체르세다 바제 가자래 저거 말이야. 와 최담자 전담바란 거 용서 맞추기 체르 전담바 대단 디오시 다바미니 위치당. 이제미 시험에 란종거 이시 다 란종거 이시 돈용 무슨 또 이시험 아니 지다와 또 남제자वर 자고 있잖아. 란종거 이시 깨지기 키 란종거 이시 깨지기 아니 최점제 치지 말로 봐. 나봐 탐제도 오바 또외 리바마인 비수지 리바차와 세가 신이 세비 시용을 최전의 리바마인 비수지 아니 가서 리바 메비 수지 아니 유천이 아니 리바차와 제지 매제와니 제와니 중화인라 지바니 귀차바 바시데 딜라 아니 가서를 也把马英保是全都把叫完的就把没完没把내가 시원히 깨워라 소위 내가 말을 받아 travi치로 깨워라 소위 내가 말 태권아니라 깨워라 소위 내가 말 받아 travi치로 남다 많이 시자와니 송화단 zem바탕 다근 오버탕 아니 현용 오버탕 오 매바를 남바 다바 많이 미쳐 야 대바주다
So next comes, it's not something which is imaginable. And that epithet that all phenomena, because they're not established, they're completely unestablished by means as having an essence. So one cannot imagine this reality as this or that. One is unable to imagine this reality as this or that. And then it's not something which is knowable, or difficult to translate that. Not something which is an object of awareness or something which is knowable. That epithet, it says that a single moment of the self-originated gnosis, because it completely comprehends all phenomena unmistakenly in all of their aspects. So this is referring to omniscience. It understands reality and here it says by means of not understanding it. So there's a sort of play on words here or ambiguity in the word awareness, and this is in reference to, for example, we take the Arya's vision of reality when they're absorbed in meditative absorption. They know reality through not knowing, because the duality of subject and object have dissolved within that, so there's no object which is known in a dualistic fashion within that kind of cognition, and so therefore this is a reference to that. And likewise with regard to total omniscience, it knows things in a way by means of not knowing them, without knowing them. And then it says it's without arising or disintegration. Rising refers to things appearing, or another basically synonym for arising is given. And disintegration refers to either the stoppage of a continuum of things, the stoppage of a continuum, or the disintegration of things. Sort of annihilation of things, and this reality doesn't have these two. And then where it says blissful, it's blissful because it it's completely separate from all of the injury that arises through that occurs through arising and so forth. And then it's not scrutinizable. Maybe one can translate that. Namtakmayin is not, can't be scrutinized. It can't be. It's not something that one can scrutinize or understand it in terms of these categories of either a object to be perceived or the perceiving subject, or it cannot be understood as its own entity or another entity other than itself, and it also cannot be understood as being a non-entity either.
No, yeah, I call it so. And the call it 남다 많이 체친자로 오면 버치. 다 나와 매시야 돼. 들어와. 나와 매시와니, 나와 매진시와니. 안에 가서 라다 현도 대태고 라다 현도 나와 매버치다. 참아 매시와니 아니 수당 수매백이 안테 관한지 수당 수매백 참아다 차와 인장 아니 참아다 참아 매바다. 사제 매시와니 겨와다. 아니 레와당 지바당 아니 태권한 영어 현도 주와니 제샤웨게 아니 사제당 차위체를 다 이미 세대 가르러 사람 미반이 세도 가데 이미 많이 미 세대라 이미 많이 셔와니 아니 가서래 미반이당 다 타니스메 바미바 이당 이나 야나 처지 다도메 바다 가사가 다메 바미바 이상 니스메 바니 메바 미스메 바니 이당 아세라나 처단 가사가 다소메 바 이당 데 탈라자 탈라자야지다 니메로 상다니 대담메 이당 미바다 미바메바 냠바니베 미바당 미바메바 니가 안 된루데 메바 냠바니바 냠바니시 싫어 시시와니 이시 시외 안에 도바차와 이름 안에 라나 라도시라 라나메비 두임비 싫어 야
So next comes the epithets. It's without appearance. It doesn't. Because it's something that doesn't appear as itself or as other. It doesn't appear in that way. It's devoid of signs, and here this is because it's devoid of the signs of physical or non-physical things. The signs of physical or non-physical things. It's without manifestation. It's devoid of, it's because it's separated from, devoid of arising, enduring, disintegrating, or transforming into something else. All of these manifestations of things, reality, the reality referred to here is separate from those things. And then it's non-dual and not non-dual. There's two sort of things which are negated here, non-dual and not non-dual. And so one can read this in a couple of ways. One could say the duality which is rejected here is the two extremes of eternalism and annihilationism, or one could take this as in terms of the two selves. But the gloss on this given in the commentary here is saying that it's devoid of the two observed objects, if one can take that as the two extremes, or the two selves of person, self of phenomena, and it's devoid of those and devoid of a non-observation of those as well. And then, because the reason that's given there is because the observed object and the absence of an observed object are equalized within that. And then it says it's peaceful. This peaceful gnosis is something to, it's because it's something which is understood or realized by this peaceful gnosis, or one could say that it's thoroughly peaceful because it's, it's peaceful because it is the cause of the unexcelled perfect peace.
Oh yeah. 나더니 로주 남방바 세대기 아니 시단 로주 남방바 세대 로주 남방바 셔바니 된다마다 또마다 제수 tum바 세가나 아니 다 가르로 된당 모습도 또비 된당 대방 모습도 또바기 파배이시 의전 된당 모여당而且多把当特sản公司几个写的，团长都比团长都把对比特sản总公司几个写的，特别团长讲团把是过的，是吧？团长把多把糖，有些团长我当，特别有些团长写多些特sản公司来说比，俺那写了主办没被出的就不写的这些，写了主办没把，这个了团长把主办没被出的就被有人被写的。참마단 자와다 묘바단 자와 르주바 방하고 사는 다들 지나 가서래 이시 도면이나 안에 놀라 주바이다 안에 참마다 자와 된루고 나와다 매바 르주바 예장 참마다 자와다 묘바단 자와 르주바 남바 방하고
So next epithet is that it's abandoned the activities of the intellect or mind in general. One could say the word buddhi or lo is can refer to the mind operating in general or specifically to intellect, the operations of the intellect. And so the gloss on that, it's completely abandoned the operations of the intellect, activities of the intellect, means that that the wisdom which Tendamba topa tan Jesu tumpe sharap. Tendamba topa tan Jesu tumpe sharap. Chupa maybe.
Shara chupa maybe. Shara chupa maybe to Jupich. Shara chupa maybe to Jupich. Chupa maybe to Jupich. You in
So now the wisdom which understands reality in accordance with the ultimate nature of things, it engages with its object without play on words again, without engagement. So how does that occur? Or it operates with respect to its object without operation. That's referring to the way in which a direct realization of emptiness doesn't operate through the medium of concepts or any kind of thought, the activity of thought. So in that cognition of emptiness, the duality of subject and object, again, in prior instances of understanding emptiness, one understands it through the medium of a concept initially, but once one gains a direct realization of emptiness, then the concept dissolves, disappears, and so that the object emptiness and the perceiving subject, the cognition, are indistinguishably fused or mixed homogeneously. And so that's saying that so the operation of thought, which always works through the medium of concepts, has ceased to operate, and therefore this wisdom which operates in accordance with reality or the ultimate it engages with its object without this sort of operation of thought. And because, and then the gloss on that is because this has completely abandoned the operations of the intellect, which occur together with signs, the signs of things, and as well as with the observed objects.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Me ba xie cha wa ni, le yu ma yin be che se ga la, da ni na le che le yu ma yin be che. 这个有样嘛，因为自己一个没把噻，反正这个样其他我许多就把人带话印章，这个有嘛因为自己一个没把呢，绝对没把握。一个一些家伙呢，抓他给抓他的我噻，他呀，
抓的我。So here the next word is it's without letters or without syllables, because it's, and then the reason for that is it's not the object of mind or intellect here, and since it's also not something which is the object of words, therefore it's without syllables or without letters. Syllables is probably better here, without syllables, and because it's ineffable, it's inexpressible or ineffable, and in the actual verse of homage there, it says, it uses the word akshara in the instrumental case, or syllable in the instrumental case, and that's showing that it's not something which is superimposed right here, which is exaggerated by means of letters, by means of syllables. Yeah.
Oh yeah. 그래서 다들이 이제 투지전이지 있어야 돼. 투지니지 된자바 덤바만노 니숨바 사제. 투지니지 있어야 가나 아니다. 된저 좀 봐대. 아니 가서最必须 再把마인 봐. 된저니라 가서 된저래서 最了 차비지 만在 남도친나 테니데스 오마 주발에 소바나신 투지 니지 셰와제 제비치 마인바로 땡자바 셰와니 아니 오랍도 땡바 주와고 땡바 셰와니 하다 땡바 셰와니 하다 민남라 랑도진에 치지마로바 땡바 인바 야나 태kwa나니 치지마로바 땡바 인바나 땡바고 마네와니 송아 셰차와니 아니 태양다바 치다바 신도 아니 랑게 치다라 시바 신도 아니 송바데라 송바오 텔라니 셰와니 템바라오 그와 차와니 삼바 타바네 아니 템바차바 삼바타바는 되범 삼바타바내서 차자로 시와네 차자와 규지 제차오 되나 대단한 대니 좀 된대라 아니 란데 비순 사와다 잔데 비순 사와 잔데 로 칠레 비순 사와다 숨지된 저거 이제라 라나 현지 된 비순 사와 된데 랑게 되니 투수 주네 현라 되바 랑게 타니 투수 치바데 란데 핀소다 강 투수 치바데니 아니 현라 되바 잡아니 현재 핀소 라 된거디 템비시로 야.
So then the next lines from this say, out of compassion. This shows the word out of compassion, shows it wasn't for the sake of argument. This text was, and the Lord Buddha taught this reality not for the sake of argument. That's not why it was taught. And he taught it, taught reality or demonstrated reality, one could also say, because he did that properly. And then the teacher, the epithet teacher, is that he is the unmistaken teacher of both gods and humans. And he teaches this in an unerring fashion, means that he teaches it just as it is, correct, the meaning correctly, meaning or the reality itself correctly. And to that teacher is, again, just glossed as to the teacher, the Lord Buddha here. Respectfully, I respectfully prostrate or bow down, pay homage. Respectfully means sincerely, and pay homage is just glossed as I pay homage, and it's with an imperative there. I pay homage very sincerely, and that being the case, then the Lord Buddha has, or the Bhagavan has, this shows that the Bhagavan is one who has perfected both his own and the aims of others, and that he himself has comprehended reality just as it is, and teaches it to others. So he achieved his own aim by comprehending reality properly, and then teaching it to others has achieved the aims of others as well.
나 되게 초자바디 생산네 아니 나 단지 좀봐 탐자와 좀봐 탐자가 저지 임바들 단지 좀봐 체체나 아니 워낙 강기치단 저와 강기치 단지 좀봐 체체나 대실은 현존주지 두쇼지 장주 전부 레시안남 기니 뒤질 소외지 누에 조사 줘봐 차我这个他先把他们先把这呢，先买的，现在就这先讲话呢，先到个疼，但现在是呢，先养的了，把做的把这，那是吧？现在呢，先就养的人了，养了，先经过呢，那他养的就把了，把刚刚下错过，就是现在呢，先到个疼才会去了，读书先讲话呢，看到个读书差不。我现在准备去怎么修车保养，都修车保，那边说，长久全部写下完呢，长久原因长写完呢，他你们把它写进纸巴来长完，去不写完呢，太困难你了，落去吧，写进太困难，写下毛驴把去吧么倒吧。长久写完呢，全部长久写完呢，长久原因了，全部原因呗是，但全部是呢，长久全部是呢，三把他没见过细微，做起话的三把他没见过细微，他都给写的了，长久全部是个的，这当长久全部他三节团去下去为止的，是吧？我印象。在他没写完呢，一些长久觉得这个三把他没写完，写比他都给写的长久全部的做起话，做起提前，先长久全部的，三节的长久停下去，我说，提把他们家。提把这个结束就不恰当，我当提把他们家他提把说明讲，他都给提把这个结束就不恰当。 또바 타입 또바 아니 가서 또바 잡아 아니 지다와다 지내봐라 저거 시지 아니 남랑 타야봐 여비칠 여비치로 내내 가서래 개를 내자는 제가 다 가서 늦은 수요일에 봐지 어디 자주 전부 내셔는 세대 개를 내자는 시와니 몇시 비싼 바 삼바전 또도 매밤 저 미진시지 몇시 비싼 바 몇시 비싼 바 양다 받게봐 나서 야 되지진
So next, so that was the expression of homage at the outset of the text, praising the Lord Buddha for teaching reality in that way. And then comes the demonstration of the purpose of the composing this treatise, as well as the relationships between the parts, the text and the subject matter, and so forth. So if you say, well, why did you compose this treatise? What was the purpose, and what are the relationships between the text and the subject matter, and so forth? And then the next lines express that. First comes the purpose of composing the text, and this is given in the next verse where it says, Master Bhaktiviveka says, "I say," in order to achieve that others achieve their aims, in order to accomplish the aims of others, by means of the special observance of those who have fixed their mind upon the Great Awakening, and in order that they can be able to take hold of the nectar of reality. To the extent of my ability, I will explain a little bit of this. So that's his verse of expressing the purpose of composing the text, as well as the relationship between the text and its subject matter. And so where it says, in order to achieve the aims of others, that's glossed as meaning in order to accomplish the aims of others. The word observance here refers to specifically those who have taken up this extremely difficult observance. Observance means religious practice, specifically religious practices, so these harsh, difficult religious practices. And the word great awakening, Mahabodhi, or great awakening. So the first of that in the Tibetan, it gives Bodhi first. Awakening, Changchup, has two parts to it. The first part, purified, is the Tibetans gloss that as Bodhi as first of all purified of all of the obscurations which are mental afflictions, as well as all of the obscurations which prevent omniscience. And then the second part of that refers to the complete comprehension of reality in its entirety. So on the one side, purification, the other side, thorough comprehension of the nature of reality. And because that is great, it is the Great Awakening. And so here, Great Awakening, it can refer to the realization of Buddhahood, the object or the comprehension of reality, which is the characteristic of Buddhahood, or one could understand that as also just a kind of tag for Buddhahood itself, for being a Buddha. And then next comes, it says that all of the vehicles, in order to cause people to engage in all of the vehicles by means of a single vehicle, that will be explained subsequently, showing how all three vehicles of the Pratyeka Buddhas, the Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas are engaged in by means of the single vehicle of the Mahayana. And then, that's one purpose of that, the Great Bodhi, the Great Awakening. And then also, so as because of it comprehends the limitless things which are to be comprehended through that awakening. Then it says those who have fixed their minds, those who have generated the intention, an unbreakable form of the intention to achieve the great Bodhi.
Great. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That didn't 대남 뒤질 아니 가서래 대남라 뒤질 성외에서 공도 시아바게 안에 현재도 자주도 샘께바당 자주 제배지가 안 도시 잡고 좀 거야다 아니 레자나면 시아바다 미시비스 태양 삼바 태양 아니 도도 매바 미시비 삼바 깨바 대남 아니 대남 대니 뒤질라 성외 관에 성외치 아니 단주디 삼바 체스 좀 체대 대단한 테니거와 인노 대다와대 단지 좀 거와 인 야 거와 인노 뉴에 진짜 줘봐자 세완이 저와 인데 다 단지 어와 아니 가서를 저자 거와 인거 다 저와 야도 대시 tindik 단지 그 저와 해야 돼 어디 세자완이 저와 인데 기다리잖아 균장 관계지 좀 된 대지 특바 준비 체를 좀 된 대지 특바 준비 체를 대인 뒤지 이게 봐도 매바탕 아니 이게 봐도 매바탕 대인 특바 첨부 태양 아니 이게 봐도 매바탕 대인 시도 자첨부 가자와 디 제수 아니 로빈 지장 로빈의 제지장 로빈 지장 오미 단주수的意思嘛是他罗宾的罗宾入住期是吧在我提议结束罗宾入住期我们单据在我写了说加些单据那给罗先把那长于七度但连这让给罗先把那长于七度俺那让给罗于女娃当咱把去女外就是咱们去就被切了
So then, so that gives basically the purpose. I mean, purpose, or in terms of who this text has been composed for, and then further explanation of why the text was composed. This text was composed. This treatise was composed in order to nurture those who and to enable those who have those sort of qualities to be able to take up the nectar of reality. And the text was composed for that purpose, and that is the purpose of the composition of the text. In general, in composing a treatise, you have the purpose of composition is expressed at the outset, and then the relationship between the different factors that go into the composition of the text. And then Master Bhaviveka says, according to my ability, I will express a little bit of that. That gives the relationship between the purpose and the composition itself. And if one asks how is that the case? And it's here it says, now Lord Buddha, because it's the case that Lord Buddha, the Bhagavan Buddha, for the sake of the Mahayana, taught, he bestowed limitless letters, limitless words which express the nectar of this reality, and he taught the meaning in an extremely vast fashion. Following upon that, the master, and master here refers to Master Nagarjuna, also composed an extremely vast treatise on the middle way. And although that's the case, I, Master Bhaviveka here, in order to lead those of weaker intellect, to the extent of my ability, will express just a little bit of that.
Oh yeah, that this is get the chome bala juwa re, ra, juwa inzang, ane lenye ke chiwa ma se, ane kaso, samsung ke ane kaso, le manam ke wang ke chiwa yang kwa bala pa jago je sanje ji koma tawa ina, ane se, le manam ke wang ke chiwa da, ane samsung de ane jishi tenpa zo kogyo wa rwa, ta teni je ta di jumu do ya terwa, ta di je la. 但是他这个按那过年节假用是做话个京东做的啦，季节假用是做话但做话那样不样他不通了，按那但是就把那说话个七八件通有啊人家京东的啦，京东七八年长久3年没到当，特别都需要养大等。 대시와 초반에 등근 주위 제반이 세차와 대선 이제 세차와 대선 나한테는 장주선님 몇돈당 세대 장주 천벌 몰람 따와 남지세 나는 뭐 양다 봐서 장주도 셈께봐 몰람 따와 남지 안에서 토마 장주지 셈께봐당 안 토마 장주 일에 쳐봐다 민자와 차오 민자와 차오 저 장주 일에 쳐봐다 민자와 차오 되네 치료 유튜브 최단 tumba 치료 유튜브 최단 tumba 티바 첨보나 숨비 투비 두쇼 치료와 그 안에 랑그 체제와나 랑랑그 안에 두쇼 캐나 받잖아 숨바 두쇼당 티바 첨보나 숨비 투비 두쇼 양다 받단 차오 어디기 안에 가서래 지좀 되라 투비 두쇼 양다 된 아니 두비도 쇼양다 된 대시와 초원이 대오도 초스롱위를 로초스 안에 봐서 초롱 매봐 저와 탄 초롱단 차유권에 초스 홍위 로매봐 슈루 탐제라 안에 나봤다네 리베당 롱당 민가위권에 안에 시태 태권하니 10월 채위체리 아니 좀 받고 배바 차대 대다 줘봐서 뭐 대단히 아니 랑센지 된 탐제 주바 채비 랑당 센지 된 탐제 주바 채비 줘봐 인데 대지들은 너 담바 이노
So then next comes showing the sort of the sort of general point here. Here, if one is to understand properly and to see correctly, by means of one's intellect, understand in its entirety the meaning of all of the treatises that have been taught by Lord Buddha and Master Nagarjuna and so forth, in order to thoroughly comprehend all of that, the intent of all of those treatises. Then there's a sort of summation of this, which is given in the next verse in the root text, the karikas here, the root verses. And so this is given in that next verse where it says, don't give up bodhicitta, firmly remain within the observance of the Muni, the sage, seek understanding of reality, and this is the practice which enables one to accomplish all objectives. So there's three things: not giving up bodhicitta, remaining firm within the observances of the sage, and then seeking out knowledge of reality. So the first of these, those who have made a kind of firm prayer, who have established a firm prayer to achieve the great awakening of Buddhahood, at the very outset, they should not become separated, not allow their attention to wander from awakening. So this refers to taking up bodhicitta, developing the attitude of bodhicitta, the aspiration to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So at the very beginning, they should not allow their attention to wander from that bodhi, that awakening. And then one should, in accordance with the way practices are, Dharma practice is taught in Lagen di Chirope Tupe Chu.
대내 치료비 투비 최단 투바세 치료와 그 투박이 아니 투바기 안에 두시다 틈바 투바 첨보라 송바 송비 안에 투비 두시 한다 발랑고래
주로
주로 코랑 대다기 두시다 템바 안에 투바 첨보와 이나 투바 첨비 두시 한다 발랑고래
So then in harmony with the way Dharma is taught by the sages of outsiders, the Mahayana practice, it's said here that one should be extremely firm in the religious observance of the sage, here referring to the Buddha as sage. So here within the Mahayana, a Mahayana practitioner at times should follow the observances which don't conflict with Dharma that are advocated by the sages of the non-Buddhist outsider traditions as well. So they should remain firm in those kinds of practices. And then beyond that, in addition to that, one should maintain one's intellect such that it doesn't fall under the sway of extreme views or actually fall into partisanship, fall into a kind of partisanship. And without falling into partisanship, one should examine in detail all of the different systems of philosophical and religious practice, and then one should make effort in order to understand reality in a way which does not contradict with either reasoning or scripture. And thus, if those who follow these three kinds of practices they're engaging in that kind of practice in order to achieve, and they will be able to achieve all of the objectives of both themselves and others. And in order to express how to do that kind of practice, this treatise here it gives a brief explanation of all of that.
That call us or then not number you know. Telarashi Chanjuji Sim and Tambo Java Chagis on Chejava Chade Chanjuji Sim Chejava Chidabo Siena Chambatani Nijedan, Shiva Chimbi Gamba Yin Sanja Sabin Chanju said Teji Keva Temidang Sesundota. Tantini, Chamba Chimbo Shechawani, that's some Kasore Dungale, Dadi, and the Dawata Chidan, Chamba Singandera, Dawata Dendoki Chamba, Dungada Traduki Ninja. Anyhow, Kasore you don't with Chamba, chasing Papa, you don't with Chamba. Or say Gana Chaba to Shago in down. Then the dealers most general China Dungal tried to drag it to the but that the water than the Java Dresina. Chamba Chumbo Shechavani, Samjan Tamja, and then Dewatan Dembe, Demba, and Dewala Gubukan, and the Samjatam Dungal and Java. To Jagina, Samjat the Dungal Travata, and then draw a town. I know about Chanchupara. Omba Chanchupa Chavatang, Lanambayanta, Sanja Chanjula, Gova Chavatang. Also, Yangalan David, Sem Java, Sekaran, Da Yandela Gobaki, Sem Java, Shidan Damba, oh. Nijambo Shechavani, Semjan Tamja, Ani Dungala, Ani Tayu Gwana, Semja Chitan Chavatang. And Semjan Tamjang, Andrew Dungale, Yons Javatang. Ani Tiba member is Sem Java Teda, Tiba member is Sem Java Teda, Ani Tiba member is Sem Java Tela, Dode, Ani Lanam Bayanda, but Chajula, Sem Juba, Tiba member Lamatam. Yandabi Lamdo could be Sem Java Shitan Damba, so Yandabi Lamdo could be Sem Java Shitan Damba, Ya de Lata.
So now, so here, with regard to this treatise that's composed here, sort of at the outset, the author is saying I should express how to avoid giving up one's bodhicitta, one's thought of awakening. And here, bodhicitta would refer to conventional bodhicitta, the wish to achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So if you say, what is this so-called bodhicitta? bodhicitta, if you ask that. And then he gives, Master Bhaviveka gives the verse here, and it says, love and compassion adorned with great knowledge, or great wisdom maybe here, is, and the seed of Buddhahood is bodhicitta. Therefore, those who are wise do not give that up, should never and do not ever give that up. So that verse expresses in the nucleus of it his explanation, the basis for expounding this exposition of bodhicitta. And so the first one, great compassion. Here, great compassion, it's normally great love is the first epithet. Great love. Normally, love refers to the wish that others have happiness, and so there are different kinds of love. The love which views other sentient beings in an affectionate manner, love which wishes them to have happiness, etc. But here, Master Bhaviveka is speaking of love in the sense of initially freeing sentient beings from their suffering, especially the sufferings of the samsara initially, sufferings of even the lower form of liberation and so forth. And so he's saying essentially that in order to establish beings in happiness, they necessarily, and thus to have love for them, one has to free them from their sufferings. So great love here is defined as freeing sentient beings from everything, all suffering. And there's two words for liberation here. The first is like freeing them from gross forms of suffering, establishing them in liberation, establishing them in full awakening, and then establishing them in complete nirvana, so total nirvana. So there's four forms of generating this love, which were listed there: the liberating them from gross forms of suffering, liberating them thoroughly, establishing them in awakening, and complete nirvana. And then great compassion is next, which is normally the wish to free others from suffering, and that's defined here as that performing the aims of all sentient beings, that protecting sentient beings from the evil destinies, lower realms of rebirth, drawing them out of the inferior vehicle, and placing them in the true path. So generating one's mind in those four forms of great compassion.
Oh, yeah.
Compassion.
That didn't. I share what you share, and number years. Tabji Shewa, the Sherabji Shewa was. There are Tabji Shewani, Koso Yonso Jabatan, Dembi, Gevetawa, Tamja Kitchens, Tabji Shewa de Kasana, and the Gawa Soba Bota, Sachi Gawatan, Kanlas Dennis, Saba Sachi you. Or that, or Yonso Jabatan, said a Kosum, Castle Dendu to Mashamba. Shawa Yonsu Masham, Kosum, Demba Mashamba, Yonsu Jabatan. Anitemasa, Anetanda di Timan Yiki Sabaki Jaba, Chanjusibila, Gavala de Gogi, Timan Yiki Sabaki, or Kosum Yonsu Jabatan, Dembi, and a Gavitawa Tamja Jeshin. Or tell Gavitawa Saba Mashangi case, the Gavitawa Jabama, Gavitawa Saba. Or Gavitawa Jabam Saba Teni. 아니 semjian tamjia dang tumon du chia de ra kang sa bi ge zhe za wa de semjian tamma dang tumon du chia de ani rang da semjian tamjia la nam ba yang da ba zhe wei changju ji ani changju du yong su wa wa tang是吧？那nam ba yang da ba zhe wei changju to bi xi pa jie ani ga jian de zhe xia ba dang de ba xia ba dang de ba xia ba dang 아니 아라시니 개와라 아니 소남 제수 이랑와 세가라 오 때냐바 나신게 소남지 제수 이랑와라 소와탕 오 소수는 어서 자와 쳐바고 세가나 다 풍보숨바사 디 말이라 이나서 풍보숨바사 다 집어져 이제를 생각하라 어디 가라给我3把档 你把下把档 你给我来切水一让我档 是大的错是用水找我切把我 呀
So then next comes, it says great knowledge. I think I translated great wisdom, but here it's great knowledge. It has two aspects. There's the knowledge of the method and then the knowledge of wisdom, these two types. And referring to those, first comes the knowledge of method. Here one generates all of the roots of virtue right at the outset. One generates all roots of virtue in a way which is completely free from the three spheres. Now, 3 spheres here refers to conceiving of oneself as agent, the object of the action that one is engaging in, as well as the action itself. Those are the 3 spheres of any kind of activity in which there's, at least in which there's an object. And so preserving oneself from the 3 spheres, one can read that in 2 ways. One would be not seeing the 3 spheres, self as agent, the activity itself and the object of the action as existing as being real, not conceiving them as being real. So generating merit in that way. And then once one has generated it, one makes it common to all sentient beings. That is, although you have generated the merit, you expand it to include all sentient beings. And then you dedicate that to the achievement of unexcelled, true, perfect awakening. So that's the first part of that. And then next comes the confession of negative actions or wicked actions that one has done in the past. And then, in addition, comes the rejoicing in the merits of others. When one sees someone else experiencing any kind of happiness from the slightest sort of relief from their misery up to even achieving Buddhahood, then one should rejoice in the merit that those other beings have experienced. And in that way, one can complete all 3 of the. It says 3 collections here, which could refer to these 3 parts of the thing that would have been listed above: the dedication, confession, and rejoicing. Those 3.
Oh yeah, that did jela. Tabji shewa de ma chinzani. That sherabji shewa ni, cheta turn about Mr. Meba. Roa. Ane turn about Chama Mebada. Over Ducheva Mebada. I got a jenny, give a Mebada. Over Mebada, you also Matruve. You also Matruve. Oh, Ane, so topping. 我你去写话，谁干了？所到比写了不去，俺你东把你就我，东把你就我，你去写话，这就简单点把结巴我是啊，你听着没？俺你写了不去身边。 但是个呢，台大比太大给减比，谁个太大比，俺你他去恰当是吧？俺你写了给，俺你恰太大给生病，俺你上阶级，你上阶是觉得给，俺你上边你抢救个生命的，太大给减比上阶级上边你抢救个生命的。 抢救你缺他们家，我说钱把我，那他就喜欢拿去抢救钱不钱了，你缺他们家那把缺他们家，谁把他没结果，我是结巴的，缺他们家那把他们家我说钱把我，他在那讲的这个是吧？抢救的什么呢？抢救的什么是？抢救的什么呢？抢救的其实什把我是干了，天大为抢救钱不的特别气度，你抢救的什么的特别对比什么印章，什么印章？抢救的什么呢？ 抢救及三把握，看个是在上阶级上边用把提起来，抢救及什么的，你上阶给上阶给上边用把提起来，开吧，什么件了大约3把汤，什么件东西拿完了大约3把汤，差别3把汤，没话汤，没话价钱不提，没当我吃话就说呀。
So next then, that was a brief mention of the method side of the path and of bodhicitta specifically, and then on the wisdom side, there's the knowledge of wisdom, and here this refers to the generating a knowledge which, even in a single moment, which understands things as they are, and understands all phenomena as being ultimately unobservable. It says all phenomena are unobservable. That you have to qualify that with the object of negation. They're saying that they're unobservable. They're devoid of any sign. They're uncreated. They're not something which is created. All phenomena ultimately are uncreated. And then they're unarisen, ultimately unarisen. They're ultimately non-things, not non-existent, ultimately. And then and they're thoroughly unestablished, ultimately as well, and because of that, one generates a moment of this knowledge which understands the reality of things, or I should say the sort of essence or basic nature of emptiness by means of this investigative sort of understanding of the nature of things, generates that. And so that's the wisdom side of it. And then these things, then the rest next in the verse it says it's the seed of Buddhahood which is adorned by those things. So the seed of Buddhahood is the bodhicitta itself, and it's adorned with wisdom and method as they've been enumerated in the previous section. And so that bodhicitta is here also can be understood or rather the bodhi here, awakening, is a thorough comprehension of all aspects of all phenomena, omniscience as was mentioned above. So bodhi or awakening is then defined here as this thorough comprehension or knowledge of all aspects of all phenomena. And bodhicitta is the attitude which is directed towards that awakening, that bodhi, chitta, mind or attitude, thought, which is directed towards that kind of awakening. And then why? Because that is the seed of Buddhahood, then a wise person should, by viewing all sentient beings, should have the intention to help sentient beings, and then should also have a superior intention, meaning the taking on the responsibility to help all sentient beings, the aspiration to do that, and then the vast aspiration, a more intense or greater aspiration to help all sentient beings. And it's appropriate for a wise person to not give up that bodhicitta.
Oh yeah, that didn't cancel. That can be Kondo Shabaki, Kwangachi, Sanjaji, Sabayan Bateji, Keve, and then some Nomajina, Sambata, Habi Samba Mewa, Yachambo, Midanwa, Ani Katare, Midanwa, Chariba, Yudan teachers, teachers. London Indo Chewa, Shanji Dunga, Missing. Yanda Zundu Zambata, Tutan Danshi, Keva Yin. Shera Nawa Meba, Yidan Gula Tachana, Koa Misasa, Dani Gawa, Jawa, Senata, Sungudua. Oh, Tiki Karasungu, Sana. London Indo Chewa Tang, Sigana, London Chanju Samba. And London Dawaj, Chanju Samba, Chertamja, Arado Namba Chebi, Seniji, and a share of Chitama Mebata Damba. And then you do Chewa Town, Chama Mebata Damba Town. And then you do Chewa Town. Oh, just that did Sigana. That I be the young bit the Chitak to that you are one or in the Chewada, did a new Tamjeji, and Misheba. rwa lata yu biltila jana yang wasari dida nyumo ba tabjeji mishishin ane sem temba juwa meba ana meba chanju topjeji sem juwa meba ane tembe sanda temba ta ane shen yunga jina wala miseba rwa shen yunga jina wala miseba semjen tamje danyi danjawa kai lane rang dunga jin nawa naxin ane semjen shen dunga jin nawa la yang miseba semjen shen danyi danjawa kai lane ane teta dunga we danyi dunga wa tam teta dunga wa ida ranyi da dunga wa teta ke dunga naxin ranyi da dunga tangdu len da teta dunga we danyi da dunga wa tam 아니 대다 동아와라 저와라 저위치를 양다바 준지 잠바 내리 처지 제와 타라 준지 담바 잠바당 대리 준비 아니 나는 뭐 양다바 저위 산제 이 공방 주버 체버기 탑게위 처지 제와 타라 준지 담바 잠바당 투단 담바 나다 현지 전 체바 뉴바 다 현지 전 체바라 투단 담바 아니 체 뉴바당 개와 신인 전지 세르지 나와 메바 르 사와단 드라비 지담 바말이 지담 말이 바뀌라 따와 양도 따바 체네 아니 따바 체네 코와 미자미 싸워네 아니 나니 가외 아니 지담 바양 자와 르소 시 자와 자로 세야
직접 말로 캡 신인기 셔럽기 나와 메빌 르소와 당자위
개와 신인 전지 세르 셴바스만도 개와 신인 전지 세르게 나와 메바 가서 르 사와단 자위 세르 르 사와단 자위 지담 말이 바뀌나 따와
그는 따와 So then next comes if you say what is the how should one once one has generated that bodhicitta, once one has developed within oneself the attitude of wishing to achieve awakening, how should one behave? How what is one to do? How is it proper to behave if you say that? And then he gives Bhaviveka gives the following verses. Therefore, one who's intelligent, who has great fortitude, who is unable to bear the sufferings of others, who is taken up, commenced properly to strive with effort, who has power and is wise. They should look at the entirety of the world, which is devoid of the light of wisdom, and it's proper for such a person to take upon themselves the responsibility to liberate the world from the filthy samsara, from underneath it says under the ground, from basically a pit of samsara, which is a pit of filth. It's proper for me to liberate the entire world, having seen the condition that they're in. That's a very loose translation of that verse. So Master Bhaviveka says that. And so he glosses all of the different parts of that by saying someone who is intelligent is someone who has the wisdom which is characterized by the ability to properly analyze all phenomena, to differentiate all of the different phenomena. And that wisdom which is stainless wisdom, which is qualified by that ability to properly differentiate all phenomena. That's the definition here of intelligence. Someone who has fortitude refers to someone whose mind is such that it can't be broken by all of the, it says devils and mental afflictions. The word devil here, Mara, refers, for example, external devils or demons that attempt to distract one with pleasure, like the Devaputra Mara. The Kamadeva is the god of love who distracts beings, or the mental afflictions that afflict sentient beings. They possess a mind which is firm, such that it cannot be broken by the devils or the mental afflictions. And then likewise, such a person when they're unable to bear the sufferings of others. That refers to they've seen that all other sentient beings are similar to oneself, and that in fact they are suffering worse than oneself. They recognize that, and having that kind of recognition, they take up this effort to achieve awakening for the sake of other sentient beings. And then so they have very firm and stable effort to engage in the practices of virtue, as the dharma of virtue, virtuous practice of dharma, and they have power. They possess the power to be able to do this, such that they're able to affect the aims of both self and others. And then it says a wise person like that is somebody who 신인칭기 실업 그래서 케파 신인칭기 실업기 나와 매바 르서
실업기 나와 매바
신
르사와다 자와
신인칭기
샤바 신인 genji shara member是个蛮多是吧？卡瓦新人genji shara跟那完没吧？le sawa dan travi jikden malu ba kula tawas.
So a wise person is one who is able to see the entirety of the world with the clear sort of mind. Shirapki nawa mepe le sawa dan travi. So jikden malu ba kula tawa. Okay. So a wise person is able to see that the entirety of the world is such that it doesn't have the light of this, it doesn't have the intellect which is illuminated by the light of wisdom. So that sort of person who has that wisdom, they see that. We'll stop there for now.
Peji Chushin Meto Dam Ravlin Yinde Jembodi Sanje Shindo Meti Drogen Nanda Shin La Jeba Sho Yidang Rana Mendra La Kanya Daya Mi Waya Cham Chang Mare